in business, I'll agree.
And like heavyweight money, like big dough.
Well, he has
I'm not talking about buying and selling some crummy houses. I'm talking about...
Oh, no, the guy, I would say that he had other interests, though.
Yeah.
A man of many interests.
Yeah, he has my wheel. Except I don't have, it's
goes in circles.
no interceptions?
Yeah.
Tell me what the interceptions are, please.
Let's see. Scorpio. Scorpio on the 1st and the 7th?
Scorpio's not intercepted, no. Okay, we've got Venus at 6 Capricorn. Does anyone have anything at 6 Capricorn?
Nope.
Does anybody have anything at 27 Capricorn?
No.
Did you notice that the chart that,
I have a solstice.
yeah, the chart that Ed put up had a planet in this house opposing this sun?
Yeah, but you have stats.
Pluto.
42.
Pluto in Cancer, 24.
Oh, yeah. No, Pluto was at 0 degrees in that chart. Okay, now we go to the next house, and you haven't told me what the intercepted houses are
I
yet.
can't see what you put on the second.
Oh, the intercepted house is a Cancer account.
You're right. 1 Aquarius. And 26 minutes, and there is a planet here. And it is 12 Aquarius.
My 7's a 2 Aquarius.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work at 2.
Now we have 0. 3, 7. And the moon, a softie, a soft Capricorn, huh? 12 Pisces, 2, 6,
It relates to work areas.
29 3, 7, and they have Neptune, 16 Arius, 22.
The 8th, the sextile.
That's Taurus, in case you don't identify it.
No, it's very sensuous. It's got
You're making it more interesting than it really is.
He's probably a very dull guy.
Well, I'm beginning to think that Capricorns it's okay to be a Capricorn. Yeah. Okay, now, we have here a mutable wheel, mutable cross, that is, and it is finishing degrees, so there can be some presumption, if any of you are superstitious, that he may not have completed what he intended to do in the previous embodiment, and so he had to come up here to finish it up. And he finished up so many things, and he frequently got involved in other things. So, let's take Venus in a house conjunction and sign conjunction to the sun, although it's not mathematical conjunction.
Makes it very charming.
Okay, we are charming. Okay.
And also very practical and money matters.
I'll give you that.
And opportunities come to him with Venus Sun conjunct.
You
Yes.
say that he also was rather inventive, with that Mercury in Aquarius ruling the 12th in the first house, and the first is and the 5th is self-expression.
Yes, fixed
He might have come
ideas.
up with some very unusual and inventive ideas.
Yes, fixed ideas.
Did you say that?
I'll give you a little one on that.
He can also be an imposter because that's in the decadent of stage hands. He can put himself on stage with people. With Mercury in that decadent.
You're saying Gemini's are stagehands?
No. Mercury in Aquarius in the second decadent is the decadent of acting and being on stage. So his mind is constantly entertaining or being on stage with people.
I'll give you a sort of a one on that. Now, let's see here. Let's see here. What we're looking at is Sun opposition Jupiter. And we're looking at,
Those are business decisions.
what do you say?
Business decisions.
Okay, business decisions. I'll give you a yes on that.
What's that, the big?
Might there have been a problem between his parents with the opposition and the familial houses, the 10th and the 4th?
Let me tell you that there was problems in the family.
Right, okay.
Bob, where's Mars?
Well, what?
You left Mars?
Mars. Is there a Mars in the house? Count the planets.
What is a Mars?
Well, it's got to be here someplace.
Bob's computer did it again.
No, I just didn't put it down.
Oh,
You know, if Ed had been caught in something like this, he would have said, I just left it out to make sure you were listening or observing. But I will be quite honest.
Mars is missing.
Did I catch
Now, you know, Mars is where the pot is boiling, right?
Third house of worries.
It's funny you said that.
He couldn't be a writer now, could he?
I'll give you
Writer,
writer,
of course.
but it wouldn't help. It wouldn't help. This is a man of many parts.
Virgo rising is always into something that has to do with communication anyway.
Well, let's go and do some other things about Virgo. Virgo rising, self-critical, self-improvement oriented, critical of other people, and probably wanting to serve in some way. And with the sandpaper of his criticism, he might take diamonds in the rough and file them down to a fine patina. He might be editorially, like to correct this, make this
He
better.
might even be an editor of a newspaper.
I'll give you that.
Yes.
And with his mind, with the rule of his ascendant sitting in an air sign, it's got to be at the communications.
And isn't it interesting that this is in the Mercury, Gemini, Deck, and Wad?
He's got a newspaper, columnist type,
There you go.
and he wrote a column in which he did social satire and criticism of the government and things like that.
And,
Because that Pluto in Leo is taking apart the government. So he could have been critical of presidents or critical of governors or people like that.
okay, I must admit that you're beginning to draw a picture of this man. A social, political critic, is that what you're saying?
Like an H.L. Mencken type, that type of thing.
Was Mencken considered to be a curmudgeon?
Yeah, type, yeah, but not, but this guy's a little softer because that moon in Pisces.
But this guy has a great deal of class.
Yeah, he wouldn't.
We're talking like
he wouldn't call a guy dirty names. If he did, it would be in a nice way.
Check this out. Let's do the sun. The sun, did we forget to break down the ascendant degree? Holy mackerel there. And we got Venus Taurus, and we got Sun Rio, Dwad. So that takes us to the sun. And the sun takes us from Saturn Cappy to Mercury, Virgo, to Jupiter, Sagittarius, Dwad, which may take us someplace. Okay, Sagittarius, Dwad takes us here. Jupiter takes us there. Let's take a look at Jupiter. We're talking Moon, Cancer, and we're talking Neptune, Jupiter, Pisces, and the Mars, Arias, Dwad.
Service and activism.
Yeah. Now, if we go with the Neptune, we're going to have to come over here. Uniform. If we go with Mars, Aries, and hands, we're talking about kill foreigners or kill strangers. Okay? So you have a person of the mind and who is somewhat of a body.
Okay.
You remember the Japanese guy that didn't believe the war was over? And 20 years later they finally convinced him? He had Mars and Sagittarius in the first house, and I gave a dinner talk at one of the astrology groups, and I said, that means kill foreigners. And in his case it worked.
You like that?
Yeah, I think they found it mildly amusing. Now, check this out. Pluto of power, having 10 times the power of Mars, and in a sign which represents managerial and or ruling types, in trine aspect to Mars. Now, had it been square, we got a guy with a bad temper. But I would say, trine Mars, he could be very constructive. And, however, I do not doubt for a moment that he had the power to say things which might upset people.
Question, did this fellow put some emphasis in his home by any chance?
I would like you to rephrase that so that I will understand what you're trying to ask.
In other words, did he elaborate, did he like his home a lot? What he did he...
Okay, let me put it like this.
Castles.
This guy, let's put something in here. If the ruler pure and prestigious and in good neighborhoods.
Look at the papers I gave you.
Okay, you have said it is William Randolph Hearst, and I'm going to give you a negative on that. You have also said it is Joseph Pulitzer.
His rival.
Ah, interesting that you chose him. Okay, another negative. However, very plausible. Now, let's go back to your question. Yes, he was, Venus is evaluate, right? Mm-hmm. So he placed a high value on, living in a place which had a little class. I consider Capricorns potentially very classy people because at least they're class conscious. So he found himself traveling somewhat because the ruler of home base is the ruler of a travel place. And he did like to stay with people who had some affluence and resources, that is correct. And I must tell you that Venus rules something. What does Venus rule?
Rules Taurus
And
Libra.
but what qualities?
The finer qualities of Libra.
Artistic.
Go.
Artistic, beauty, charm, anything that has...
Manners.
Well, also manners. It's not harsh.
Okay.
Soft.
Okay. He was a composer.
Music.
As far as I know, he only wrote one hit tune. However, he did like to sing. And what else? What were some of the other things you said? Oh, yes. He also had a way, you know that, where were we? Let's run around the chart a couple of times. Okay, one of his talents had to do with art. However, it was sort of practical art. And sometimes his art, which was one of his forms of communication. This is words, figures, symbols, lines, and what you do with your head and hands. So he actually, as a critic, and a critic with some artistic abilities, he turned his art to cartoons, political cartoons.
And well known them?
Well, I will tell you one thing. They were in the library.
Yeah.
And I am sure that a few people wrapped the newspaper, which had the cartoon in a fish and disposed of it at some time. By the way, at one moment you must zap in on him because occasionally he closes his eyes and looks like he's asleep. And I would suggest that you sit in a less comfortable chair or sit less comfortably in that comfortable chair.
I'm listening through the
If
alpha
it was
level.
more interesting, he'd stay awake.
Maybe I should pound on the pulpit like my old man did.
Don't take it
In my
personally.
class,
Yeah, I really, I feel very shocked, diminished,
my classes, nobody goes to sleep. I bang.
Well, don't feel
tables on the
diminished,
table.
you mustn't do that.
Okay, I withdraw diminished. There's one thing that I think that you got to look.
Do my class?
Does this man have something to say?
Oh, yes.
Where is he saying it from?
He's needling and teaching, and he's saying from Bangula, 28 degrees of Scorpio, the most fortunate star.
Now, this not only has to do with what you write and what you say, but it also has to do with your reading matter. Think about that. Now, if you hook in the ascendant to reading matter, it may be that he read for a Capricornian reason, which was also a Virgo reason, in order to improve himself as a writer and also as a communicator. Because you'll notice that this is in a wide square to the ascendant. And there was a time when any time that he said anything, he annoyed people. And he really wanted people to like him. So what he did was he started studying other people's words, and he endeavored to become a more pleasant person. Because if he did this, he might achieve the ear or power of, some people who met in groups, friends. A man like this needs friends. Capricorns can get kind of lonesome. Now, let me ask you this. What kind of family background might he have had?
A difficult one.
Now, you're saying that because of what?
Capricorn. First place is a Capricorn. Capricorns usually have a difficult childhood.
As a matter of fact, he had to work as a child. And he had to work under conditions which were maybe not that great. And if you could figure out what the family did for a living, you might pick this planet. And that would be Venus, Capricorn,
Farming.
Venus, Capricorn. Something to do with animal products. Will you go with that?
Yeah.
And then we've got the Neptune, Jupiter, Pisces, Dewad, which may lead you somewhere and may not.
Or farming near the water.
As a matter of fact, the place he came from, I believe, is near water. I'll give you water.
Chicago?
I'll never tell. But as I say, he had to work from an early age, which is very typical Capricorn. But you'll find out that if the sun is in the fourth house, it can mean that you are from good stock. That your father was a boss or something. I think the father owned his own business, as a matter of fact. And
It also relates to a comfortable ending.
yes, that he would probably end up, after many efforts, the Capricorn, theoretically, is trying to do what the mountain goat does, and that's get to the top of the mountain. But here's the bad news. They strive and they struggle, and they finally get up to the top, and then what do they see? The way over here is the real mountain, and now they're down here again, and they go up, 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 up. So he went through several peaks, and at each peak he realized that there was something bigger, and he strived for that.
It's easy as they get older.
Well, if it's in this house, man, you know that's true, that he can look forward in his golden years to, he will be respected, he will be honored, and all that good stuff. Now, this should tell you something, but maybe it didn't. First of all, we have Pluto squared a nodes. Now, that is enough impetus to make a person to emotionally, because of maybe the kind of insecurity that Capricorns may have anyway, to do something about getting secure. And so what this man did was he had so many great projects. And one of them was just to become a better person. And Manly Palmer Hall said of both Capricorns and Aquarians, and I'm sure it may apply to some others, because we all got Capricorn and Aquarius someplace, that they would ultimately like to have their own business and not work for other people. And maybe they would also like to build their business up to a situation where they don't have to pursue the business anymore. And I overheard this one telling a Capricorn that Capricorns like to delegate authority. So this man sort of delegated. In other words, he had a business, and he found that some of his employees were better than some of the others, and so he encouraged them and invested in them and set them up in analogous businesses, and giving a contract, you got to pay me back, and because I loaned you the money to set up shop and all that jazz, you also have to give me interest and all that thing. So he actually wound up having other people their shoulder to his wheel, giving him freedom to do other things. Now, one of the things they say, what would you say could be one of his talents?
Mediator,
You're absolutely right. Can you give me another word?
conciliator.
Okay, can you give me another word? Well, these are people who do that sort of thing.
Arbitrator.
Diplomat.
Yeah, a diplomat. He was a diplomat.
It's also in the accounting.
Oh, wait a second.
Don't think out loud. And what I'm trying to say is, I know you're not going to say anything, but you're sending out horribly strong vibes.
Right.
And I know what you're thinking.
You know what I'm thinking?
I know what you're thinking, and I'll give you the Gold Star winner without looking at the paper.
You know it already?
Oh, of course he does. Now,
I don't have a clue.
okay, let me tell you
I don't.
that if Mars is there putting out a great deal of effort, you must make an amount of correspondence with foreigners.
That's correct, Robert.
Now, the natural ruler...
I got that, Robert, with the Mars in the third house, which has to do with communications and speech.
You son of a gun! Here, get in the better light.
You see,
This is Jack, the genius.
you see, plus,
Speaking to foreigners.
speaking to foreigners, he
Right.
spoke a lot to foreigners.
Yeah, and he carried
al-
on an enormous correspondence with
and
foreigners.
also with women, with opportunities
Yeah.
with women.
Yeah, now go sit down. Now, let me tell you something else. That some of the correspondence that he kept up with other foreign types, stop already, was subsequently published by the other people. And ultimately, Sagittarius, all languages, he was translated into all languages.
But Robert, I gave it away at the very beginning and you didn't help me.
I didn't want to. I knew this is this is what they call, what do they call a chart? This is an old chestnut. I do this chart every year. And the reason I do it every year is because I love the chart. Let me tell you that you will notice that he has in the house of what he does with his head and hands and correspondence, the sign of Scorpio. This man was a master spy.
That's right.
He was described in a book.
Robert, you're throwing them off.
Oh no, I'm trying to get him in. He was called the most dangerous man in America. And if you want to read the book, you'll love it.
That's right.
Now, this guy had a spy network, which was rather good. And you know, it was said of him when he was in Paris, you know, there's an old saying about Paris. And here is the saying. There is no way that you cannot at no time go out on the streets of Paris and not see one of the following things. One is a white horse, one a nun, and one a prostitute. Now, when he lived in Paris, they said if you were in the right part of Paris, you would see one white horse, one prostitute, one nun, and this guy wearing a white suit.
Robert, let's go back to something that I said before.
But you're
trying to give away. You're trying to give away.
I'm trying to help my two buddies out over here.
Okay, I'm going to
I
help.
don't have the
This
slightest
guy
idea.
is a writer of a popular song. He married a woman who was considered to be a grass widow because
she divorced her husband and then turned around and he married her. And she was a complainer too, by the way.
Yeah, and she caused him, or had something to do with his. You see, the man was also interested in the occult. The 21st degree of Taurus is an occult degree. Also, the 21st, the occult degree, there's a star there. I know because my moon is on that. All right?
Okay.
This is 1 degree off.
All right. It's an occult degree. It's on a node, okay? which gives...
That is the node which we call the funnel. It funnels things to you.
Secondly, that Uranus is on the 6th degree of Leo, which is an occult degree. Okay? And many mystics and psychics and folk of that kind have a planet there. Okay? You're absolutely correct when you talk about reincarnation in terms of reincarnationistic theory. Okay? The moon is on the 12th degree of Pisces. As a matter of fact, let me point that out. The moon.
Get it? Oh God.
The moon is on the 12th degree of Pisces.
Okay.
The moon is on the 12th degree of Pisces.
Go. Speak. Let's sit down.
12th degree of Pisces.
Okay.
Which opposes the 12th degree of Virgo, which is the...
Don't say it. That'll give the whole show away.
Which is...
Okay, tell them.
Well, look, they're sitting there like this.
I don't know.
Okay, let me just say one
which
thing.
is-
What he is trying to tell you is that he had among his friends some astrologers.
Not any friends, he...
Yeah, okay, no.
All right,
Go.
I don't even see 12 on that Virgo.
Let me just say one thing. If you can involve the third house, which is where you sign your name, with either Neptune or Pisces, if you'll please sit down, it doesn't work. Yes, it does. You see, we've got Cancer decanate, right? And the Cancer decanate is ruled by the moon, which is in the Cancer decanate of Pisces. So this man wrote under the name of... Now, don't tell me.
All right. Sharper John.
I've forgotten his name. It'll come to me. The guy actually... Let me tell you something about him.
Known as a writer?
He was known as a writer. His ambition was to be a writer. His ambition was to be an editor. And through the misfortune of a brother being locked up, he took over the management of the newspaper. But before that happened, he wanted to get... He was a bound boy, which means he worked for his brother for nothing. His brother was mean, and the brother thought he was dirt. So what he started doing, and if you want to write, you might try this. I read this book when I was a little boy. Addison and Steele. He read Addison and Steele. He began writing things in the style of Addison and Steele, but he turned out to be a kind of a humorous guy. And this guy must have had at least 56 or more aliases. And in order to get the brother to publish his stuff, he would stay up late at night, and then he would kind of throw it in over the transom. Now, his brother liked to drink, and he had a bunch of fops, which is not the same as a fag, that hang around with him, and, they're sort of pseudo-intellectuals, and they were sort of waiting every morning to see what came in over the transom. And this guy would write letters by Prudence Goodbody, and all these crazy names, and they would be funny, and they'd say, man, you got to put that in the paper. So they put it in the paper. A famous magazine, which was presumed to be an outgrowth of a newspaper that he once was involved in, died and has come back to life, and I think that's terrific.
The National Enquirer.
It's not the National Enquirer. However, it is a respectable publication. So here we have a guy who is a diplomat, a master spy, a copier of the style of Addison Steele. He was a critic and an editor and a cartoonist, and he traveled extensively and chased women. And he was sometimes on the street in Paris, the same time a white horse, a nun and a prostitute would be there, although he only hung around with ladies of the better classes. And he was quite a flirt.
Oh, yes.
And isn't it interesting that Capricorn rules stone, and there is a stone monument of him in an obscure park in one of our obscure American cities, in which they say that even now in death he leers at the limbs and bosoms of passing young women.
You might say something else, too. He was interested in the 6th house of hell.
Oh my God, yes. This
Yes.
guy believed in two interesting things. One was nudity and air baths, and people were shocked by this.
And also
But he
taking-
also swam, and you know something? He was the first man, in fact, he was really the inventor.
For flippers, but he made wooden things and put them on his feet, and he had ping pong paddles, and he would go down the river at rather amazing speed. And he would frequently, he wasn't embarrassed, guests would be embarrassed as they found him comfortably and rather obesely sitting in the nude as all the windows were open and the other people are wearing sweaters, because he felt it was a sort of a Neptunian approach to health.
Was he fat?
Well, I would say that he was fatter than I am.
Well,
however,
he's going to be fatter than you are.
I would say that he was probably in good shape. He was virile.
Up to a ripe old age.
Yeah, well, Capricorns never die, you know.
Alive?
In fact, he came back. He came back. They needed him. Some of his friends, you know, when Pluto is in Leo, there's a generation, or not quite a generation, depending on how long it took to get through there. It usually breeds a generation of persons who are against those in authority. And he had among his friends some people who were against those in authority, and some of them who were even radicals and revolutionists. And so, let us proceed. Yes, he also was an inventor. And when he was a little boy, he had to stir something that didn't smell very good and which got in your nose. And that is fat.
Butter.
Well, no, it wasn't butter. The fat was used to make candles. And he thought, man, with my Mercury in Aquarius, there ought to be a better way to illuminate a home. And so he would capture fireflies and put them in mason glass. No, I'm just kidding. He
was born in the 40s.
In the 1940s, yes.
Born in the 40s.
So onward and upward, he was a guy who he discovered something about electricity, which was very startling. And he also discovered that you could use, and the guy was like a mad scientist, you know. You could use the power of the elements to create light. And he used lightning to create light. He had bottles, you know, and these bottles had a negative and a positive, and he had them all wired up all over the place.
Yeah, you're coming close like Dr. George.
Friends?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, now I know who it is.
Crazy man.
Write it
Now,
down.
not only that, he was responsible for the death by electrocution of an inefficient scientist.
I know who it is.
Crazy man. And
He was a Capricorn.
yes, you didn't know he was a Capricorn. Oh my God, yes. This man's birthday is, what's the day's date?
Today's the 17th.
He's on dollar bills too.
Oh, I've seen them. What is the date today? 17th?
17.
That's his birthday. Let us celebrate this fantastic man of many, many parts. You know that he was sort of a showman, and even though he was a diplomat and a master spy and all that jazz, he used to enjoy putting on the kind of shows that this guy that used to appear on a Steve Allen show did. You know, you crank something up and sparks jump gaps, and he put on little electric shows. Because I say,
He entertained himself with electricity. Fifth house. Entertainment with...
yeah, he was an electrifying entertainer.
Yeah.
Right. And
Mercury was in that definite home of the hand.
now, he was the first franchiser of things like Postal Instant Press.
Yeah.
He was also, Capricorns like to be said that they're at the head of things. And so he headed up and created the first really efficient post office. And he also was responsible for creating a system of carrying messages fast. You know, Mars is faster. By horseback, which is Sagittarius. And these messages were carried, they were really intelligence message carried to people who were into decision making in their efforts to go into revolution and pull down those in authority. And I guess that one of the reasons that he didn't get put in the slammers was probably because he had a good aspect between Mars and Pluto. But what would you say that a Mercury square Saturn would do for you? Because, you know, all Saturn squares are potentially vocational.
Right, he would get right pamphlets against authority, or speak against authority.
I will tell you something.
Especially if they were kings and queens.
Yes. Now, he, you know, Mars in Sagittarius in a publishing house, this guy was always importing the books of the famous philosophers. And he sort of rewrote them so that the plain, ordinary, sweaty type folks would enjoy reading the ideas of the great masters. And he was very good at epigrams and things like that. And I was on the point of making an incredible revelation, which is...
I was
Call.
excited for a moment.
Yes, it'll come to me.
What was it called? Was it Poor Richard's Almanac?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And incidentally, you know that there were many almanacs that went to farmers.
Ben Franklin.
And all... Now listen, you just violated the prime directive, man.
But that's not...
That is Ben Franklin. Yes.
I'm sure.
It's
Not in
Ben.
the 40s.
I didn't... I
Say which 40s? 1740.
Yes, yes. This is Benjamin Franklin, but man, don't ever do this in my class again. If you have an idea who it might be, write it on paper. I knew that he knew who it was, and I sort of thought that he did because he sort of looked.
You know who it was.
He opened his eyes and he started looking very
No,
sparkly.
when Doug gets that dull glazed look, I know he's in a trance, a mediumistic trance,
Yes.
and he's
I'm
getting...
sleeping.
It's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's so hot.
Okay,
it would seem to me that it is almost time to faire le départ. And what we can do is we can join each other at the Louis XV room, and as you go out the door, you know, every other guy that spoke tonight was applauded, and nobody has applauded me. Let's hear it for Skeetz.
Let's hear it for Bob.
Thank you very much.
Nice if you did put down a year of birth.
Oh, no, man. I wrote an astrology book, which I've seen a copy of. I saw it at Manly Palmer Hall's when he had an exhibit of old astrology books. You're pointing at my coat, man.
Richard what? What was
Something like Carlton or Richard Mumbleton or something. But he used these astrological